Good morning, engineer. How are you doing?
Good morning. Good morning, Engineering Day, Mr. Adeshola and Mr. Tunji. The time for the webinar is supposed to be 11:30, but we might need to give room for just a little extension so we can have our guests join us. Trust
Okay.
Nigerians with African time.
This is the African time.
Exactly. It's sad. It's sad, but then, yeah, thank you for your patience.
The pleasure.
Yeah, maybe in under 10 minutes we can start or less.
Just tickle us when you're ready.
No problem, sir. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to our esteemed panelists. Good morning to our esteemed guests. Thank you for joining us here today. So you're welcome to the Q4 2023 Energy Sustainability Series webinar. My name is Princess Akachuku, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's conversation around driving mobile connectivity with off-grid solar solutions for telecom base stations. I'm pleased to introduce our distinguished panel of renowned experts and stakeholders from the telecom industry who would share valuable insights and perspectives. On the challenges and opportunities around energy demands in Nigeria's telecom tower ecosystem to enhance our knowledge and understanding of the industry needs and guide further collaboration. Here with me today, I have very esteemed panelists who are industry experts, and I would like to introduce them in no particular order. On the panel today, we have Mr. Tunji Alabi. Mr. Tunji is the Managing Director of Infratel Africa, a leading telecommunications infrastructure provider in Nigeria and sub-Saharan Africa. He has been an effective strategy director with over 30 years of proven international strategic leadership experience, with demonstrated results in operations and management of high-value and mission-critical projects in multi-platform environments, resulting in a steady growth from a telecommunications infrastructure provider to providing power as a service. Also on the panel today, we have our esteemed Adeshola Soiton. Mr. Adeshola is a partner and executive vice president of operations at Hotspot Network Limited. Hotspot is a leading telecommunications infrastructure and ICT firm focused on telephony and internet services in rural communities, leveraging on clean and reliable energy to power telecom infrastructure. Mr. Adeshola leads the project team at Hotspot and has overseen the building and commissioning of over 500 urban and rural towers and base stations across Nigerian states. He's mostly involved in the network operations of Hotspot's rural telephony network sites, interfacing with relevant stakeholders in the value chain. Also on the platform, we have an esteemed and very passionate Engineer Ayorinde Omorinde. Engineer Ayorinde Omorinde is the current Technical Secretary of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, NSE, Ibadan branch, the premier branch, and the key account manager of VANU Wireless Nigeria Limited. VANU enables cellular coverage in areas that cannot be covered profitably with their existing technologies such as radio access network RAN, in building coverage, cellular suppression, disaster recovery, and coverage as a service. Engineer Ayorinde, with over 15 years of experience in the telecom space, has worked across the telecom industries with subcontractors such as Bamisoro Telecoms, MNOs such as MTN, Towerco such as IHS, OEM such as VANU Incorporated, and VANU Wireless Nigeria. I am sincerely honored and excited to have the three of you join us on this panel today, discussing on this panel discussion today, and I appreciate the attendees for taking the time to be part of the webinar. In our increasingly interconnected world, mobile communication has become integral to daily life, transcending geographical boundaries and fostering global connectivity. However, this widespread access to mobile network is not evenly distributed, and many remote or off-grid areas still face challenges in establishing and maintaining reliable telecom infrastructure. This is where the intersection of off-grid solar power and mobile connectivity emerges as a transformative solution. The convergence of off-grid solar technology with telecom base stations presents a compelling avenue to address the connectivity gap between underserved regions. This symbiotic relationship between off-grid solar mobile connectivity not only enhances the accessibility of telecommunication services, but also contributes to the broader goals of sustainable development. As we delve into this webinar today, the conversation will focus on 4 key major areas, such as impacts on fuel volatility and rising costs on base station operations, opportunities of powering base stations with off-grid solar solution or renewable energy solution, expectations and demand from local renewable energy providers, making a strong case for green investment in telco energy demand. At the end of this webinar today, you should have gained great insight on exploring viable solutions, partnerships, and investment opportunity in the industry. Thank you to our amazing attendees once again for your attentiveness thus far. Now, without further ado, join us on a journey to understanding how harnessing the power of the sun or the power of renewable energy can illuminate the path to a more connected and sustainable future. Right away, we'll begin with a panel discussion, which would discuss further on the impacts of fuel volatility and rising costs on telecom service. So right away, our first question will go to our first panelist, Mr. Adeshola Soitan. Mr. Adeshola, looking at the volatile nature of the fuel, talk to us about how Telco and MNOs maintain base station operation during sudden fuel hikes or scarcity to reduce the impact on end users. I'll take the question again. Looking at the volatile nature of the fuel, talk to us about how Telcos and MNOs maintain base station operations during sudden fuel hikes or scarcity to reduce the impact on end users.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone, my fellow panelists, and thank you, Akachuku, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen listening to us everywhere. This is a very key questions for both telcos and MNOs in the industry, and I believe a lot of the stakeholders in industry have had to deal with this particular issue because most recently we've had a sudden jump in the cost of fossil fuel, particularly in Nigeria, and I guess globally as well, as fossil fuel prices have increased at gas stations and basically generally. So of course, basically, telcos and MNOs generally have a risk mitigation plan in place to deal with emergencies that have to do with operation of base stations generally. Most telcos have a risk mitigation plan in place to deal with issues surrounding energy. As at April 2023, telcos and MNOs are spending over 400 billion naira annually to power diesel generators in Nigeria, according to some studies. So for hotspot networks, we basically deploy low power base stations in rural communities to help bridge digital divide. So we go all green, obviously, to be able to power base stations in remote communities, because that's the most efficient way of powering base stations in remote communities because of the logistical headaches and it is almost impossible to be able to power base stations in rural communities with fossil fuels. Having said that, the best way, of course, to mitigate the risk of fuel price hikes and even total scarcity is to have an energy system in place that is independent of, or not dependent on, solely dependent on fossil fuels. In most cases, in urban areas, telcos are building hybrid systems to ensure they're able to power base stations and provide up to 98 to 99% availability of base stations and provide voice and data services across Nigeria. The key to, of course, dimensioning energy systems for base stations has a number of factors you need to consider. If you're going to be using solar energy systems, that is PV panels and battery storage, you obviously need to check radiation levels across the base stations that is being operated. Because for different regions within Nigeria, you have different radiation levels. And that, of course, would mean you require different kinds of storage solutions and PV panel arrays to be able to provide efficient and effective energy systems for those base stations. So dimensioning power, of course, is the first thing to consider when you're trying to mitigate the risk of fuel price hikes and scarcity itself. And there are various models people use to be able to do that. Globally, there is what they call the Markov model process, which uses consumption of energy systems, the trend of consumption of energy of particular base stations, because base stations have different kinds of power consumption, depending on the kind of service they're offering and the load they're offering, and the load they are carrying on a particular base station. So that essentially green energy has become quite important, even from a policy direction level. The regulator itself has encouraged the use of alternative energy solutions to power base stations, practically to be able to meet Nigeria's commitment to, I think, COP26, or climate action, as it were, as part of the SDGs. And of course, in terms of costs, it's the increasing cost of fuel is also impacting on operational expenses of telcos and MNOs. And obviously, everybody's looking to green solutions, particularly in this part of the world, solar energy, because Nigeria has a high irradiance level. And of course, storage solutions that enable telcos and MNOs to basically power base stations at lesser operational costs and more reliably. Because, of course, fossil fuels have challenges aside from cost. There is adulteration, there's logistics headaches, maintaining diesel generators. It's quite a challenge for most telcos. So most telcos and MNOs are looking to go green, and for remote locations, like you rightly mentioned, off-grid solutions are the best way of powering base stations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adeshola. If I would hear you correctly, for a TowerCo and MNO to be profitable, they actually need to adopt the green energy because it's more accessible and affordable. So our next question goes to Mr. Tunji Alabi. Sir, tell us, what practical sustainability measures are being explored in the industry to improve efficiency and reduce reliance on volatile energy sources?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tunji Alabi. I'm the MD of Infratel Limited. Princess, thanks for the introduction, and thanks to Energy for organizing this webinar. Just to give you an insight into what we do, what Infratel does, and that we'll go from there to answer the question. So just like Mr. Shueton mentioned, Infratel are an infrastructure service provider, but we especially focus on rural transformation. That means that we, first of all, go into an unserved and underserved area, in the connectivity, and then create an ecosystem around that community where we do financial inclusion, telemedicine, power as a service, solar-based cold rooms, just to empower and transform that community. Because it's our belief that rural community becomes cities over time. And it's the investment that we put in these communities that ensures that we get people into the formal sector. So in saying that, as you're aware, most companies are now focusing on renewables to actually power the infrastructure. In our case, in rural, actually getting fossil fuels to those locations. These locations are so remote that some of them are six hours on the speedboat to get to these communities. So the logistics of getting fossil fuels to these locations makes the business case for these communities prohibitive. So a lot of us have invested wholly into renewable energy, and that tends to be solar energy and wind. In some cases, we do a bit of hydro, but that is on very rare occasions. So the focus is to actually imbibe renewable energy. But it doesn't start and stop there. Because the whole idea is to invest in technologies that reduce the reliance on fossil fuels and decrease our carbon footprint, just like Mr. Shueton says, with the COP26 agenda, which is to reduce the carbon footprint. In terms of energy efficiency, what companies are doing, they're optimizing their processes and reducing the energy consumption, because it's not just providing energy, it's to reduce the energy consumption. And they're doing it in many ways.
All right.
In some cases, they're upgrading their equipment. And I'll give you an example. In our case, we actually use low-powered radios to provide the connectivity in the rural communities. The difference between what we use and what the MNAs use is a multiple of 10 and 20 times. So you'll find out that we use 20 times less energy than what most of the MNOs use, because they power this using conventional and using generators or the grid. We power ours 100% on solar. Wow. So it's important for us to reduce the energy consumption. What we also do is to actually put in what we call smart technologies to monitor and control energy usage. And I'll give you a good example. The energy usage on radios during the day is quite high because everybody uses the base station. But at 12 midnight, when most people are asleep, you'll find out that the energy usage on the base stations is low. So what we do is we reduce the energy consumption during that time by switching off some of the radios and provide just enough radio capacity for people to be able to use. And what that does for us is that it allows us to extend our energy storage beyond the hours where there's no sun. So what you'll find out is that in doing that, we actually increase the energy efficiency. We increase the the energy usage. The other things that we do is that we've invested in what you call energy storage systems, and in some cases batteries. The trend these days is to use lithium batteries to store energy to be used outside of the sun hours.
Correct.
But there's a new trend in the industry today where they're now using calcium batteries. And calcium batteries are 4 times cheaper than lithium batteries. And they say it's about 10 times, it lasts 10 times longer than lithium batteries. So there's a continuous advancement in the use of, in the development of storage systems. And what that does is that it allows the return on investment. It gives you a better return on investment by investing in things that last longer and cost less. Another factor that provides greater efficiencies is in the use of what will I call it? I'll call it reuse and let me look for a word, recycling. So what you'll find out is that most companies are focusing on recycling and reuse of materials. And what that does, it allows us to lower the cost of providing the whole energy solution, and allows us to ensure that these things last longer. So in a nutshell, companies are deploying several energy efficient solutions to meet the demand for energy, for renewable energy. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much, sir, for that elaborate insight on the topic. I hear you say one of your goals is to see how rural communities can become cities in the nearest future. I look forward to that, right? Yes. And I also hear you say energy efficiency is highly important. In order for us to achieve the goal of sustainability, we need to be energy efficient, right? We also need to focus on storage system. I'm excited to hear about the calcium batteries, and it's quite an interesting one, right? You're doing a lot in the renewable energy space as a telecoms provider. Well done, sir, and thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question would address opportunities of powering base stations with off-grid solution. Engineer Yerinde, I know how passionate you are concerning the advocacy of off-grid solutions to drive operational efficiency in the telecom space. Sir, tell us, based on the current reality of running costs and operational efficiency, what are the most viable energy mixes for rural and urban telecom tower sites? Engineer Yerinde, sir. Do we have Engineer Yerinde? Hello, sir. You need to unmute. Okay, let's take the second question while we wait for Engineer Yerinde to unmute. This is for Engineer Tunji Alabi, also addressing opportunities of powering base stations with off-grid solution. Sir, this question is for you. Solar adoption is on the rise across industries in Nigeria. What factors do towercos consider when switching or integrating solar energy solutions into base station solutions?
Hello, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Well, there are quite a number of factors, and one of the major factors is the location and sun availability.
Okay.
The different parts of Nigeria have different radiation levels, and that radiation level enables energy to be harvested from the sun. If you go to the likes of Maiduguri, you'll find out that the radiation levels are quite high, and the kind of energy harvesting that you can have in Maiduguri is far greater than that you'll have in the southeast and the south, which rates to be one of the lowest radiation levels in the country. So the first thing is the location and the sun availability or radiation levels. Another consideration is going to be the energy demands and the consumption. What is the load that we're carrying, and how much of that energy can be harvested from the sun, and how much of it would need alternative energy generation to fulfill that requirement. So the second one is, what is the energy demand and what is the load that is required? The third one I will say is what I will call the return on investment. We all know that investing in renewable energy is quite a high capex. But if I use an example of what happened to us in our office, with the removal of subsidy, our diesel bill jumped from about 200,000 a month to about over nearly 700,000 a month.
Wow.
And at that time, we decided to invest in solar energy. And the cost of solar energy for our office cost us about 8 million, 9 million. If I look at the return on investment of the return of that investment, that will tell you, if I spend 700,000 a month as against investing 8 million into solar energy, that means my return on investment will be 12 months, 10 months, 11 months, 12 months. That means in 12 months, I would have got back that investment. And I expect that solar energy solution to last me about 5 to 10 years. So when you look at so one of the considerations you have is on the return on investment, and you'll find out that in most cases, the return on investment, especially with the removal of subsidy, is less than 2 years. The next consideration is in terms of scalability. For tower codes that can have up to 4 tenants at 4 kilowatts per tenant, that gives you 16 kilowatts, 16 kilowatt per hour. What you'll find out that it is having a solar system that gives you 16 kilowatt per hour, you would need, in most cases, a solar farm. And in a lot of cases, you don't have that space to install or implement a solar farm. So the scalability and the space is a significant consideration. Another consideration that we telcos look into is maintenance and reliability of the solar system. You know, the components of the solar system include charge controllers, includes DC converters, includes batteries, solar panels, and the maintenance and reliability of these components plays a large part into the overall power availability on the site. So what we tend to look at is we see what components are the reliability of the components is a significant input into the decision making. Another consideration is with the regulator, and the regulator as it relates to compliance and as it relates to recycling, because a lot of regulators around the world are beginning to look at the recycling of batteries and storage systems as a major concern in providing regulatory approval for a lot of these large-scale renewable energy solutions. So that's one of the considerations that we also look at. And the other thing we look at, which is what we continuously look at, is the technology advancement in renewable energy, in terms of storage, in terms of PV, and in terms of off-grid and near-grid solutions. So I've mentioned about 7 considerations, and I hope the rest of the panel can join me if there are any things I have missed.
Oh, you have covered a lot. I hear you say location, availability of the sun is very, very important, right? And also scalability. You talked about return on investment, which is key, right? And you also talked about maintenance and reliability of the solar system, right? For high efficiency, right? So you have covered way too much already, but I don't know if Engineer Ayorinde is now ready to add. So do we have Engineer Ayorinde ready? And would you like me to repeat the question, sir?
Okay, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, we can hear you now. Did you get the question, sir? Or should I repeat the question?
Okay, can you go ahead with the question again, please?
Okay, right. So this set of question is addressing opportunities of powering base stations with off-grid solar solution. So the question for you, sir, is based on the current reality of running costs and operational efficiency, what are the most viable energy mixes for rural and urban telecom tower sites?
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate. Now, when you look at it, when you look at the current trends and when you look at the situation we find ourselves at the moment, basically there are only two directions to go when it comes to energy for the rural sites and for the rural communities. As we know, it's not so convenient for the government to ensure the presence of grid across the nooks and crannies of the rural communities. Even in the urban centers, much more the rural communities. So the issue of grid may not come to play now. So I'm going to suggest that there are only 2 mix we can go with. One, we can go with energy from the fossil engines and at the same time renewable energy. And when you, just like Mr. Tunji has said earlier, the cost of even deployment of the generators, so to say, the fossil engines to the rural communities, the cost will be on the high side, much more the operational expenses that comes along with it. So the most reliable mix for now is still the renewable energy. But what I would want to add is that across the rural communities, maybe we can improve on based on the location and based on the locality. If we can actually improve on the best renewable energy that will be suited to that particular location. Take, for instance, we have the solar, and as it is, Nigeria, we hardly manufacture the solar system and all the ancillaries. It is imported. And most times you have to go through the Lagos port. Now, for a site located in the extreme place, like Maiduguri or Calabar, for instance, now, even on an island, by the time you consider the corresponding accompanying cost of deployment of the solar system to those remote locations, it's still on the high side. Whereas if we are able to localize the energy or the renewable energy available in that vicinity, it may be of great assistance to us. What do I mean? Couple of weeks back, I was at IIT in I was at IIT in Ibadan.
Okay.
And I could tell you that at IITA, their canteen at the moment runs fully on biogas. In some places in the northern communities, they have the dungs, animal dungs. And this could actually be used based on the volume of the dungs being generated in that locality. We could use that.
Hello, sir. Are you still with us? Hello, Engineer Ayorinde.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we lost you for a while.
So what I'm saying in essence is that
animal dung.
We can localize the renewable energy that we are going to use based on the location that we need them. If you look at it, just earlier in this month of November, the Group Managing Director of NMTC signed an agreement with Niger State government on the production. They are trying to see how they can localize and generate energy from ethanol. Now, this will actually enable us to have more penetration of renewable energy in the rural communities. So what am I saying in essence? For now, renewable energy is still the best mix we can consider for the rural communities, but we need to localize the solutions, not only relying on solar. In some areas, there could be wind. We can capitalize on that, because the main target is how do we reduce the cost of even providing the renewable energy to these rural communities. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, sir. Thank you very much for doing justice to that question, right? Really, location can determine the mix or the type of renewable energy that can be more efficient. Talking about the sun, you have high volume of sun in the northern region of Nigeria. And you also talked about IIT Ibadan, right? How they run on biogas, right? Which they have used what was available to convert to biogas. And you talked about Niger Delta area, right? And how they can work on the availability of ethanol there. I hear you say the last time we discussed, you talked about dry gin and all of that. It can be converted to ethanol. These energy sources are available in Nigeria, in Africa. And I want to hope that at the end of this webinar, attendees here and other stakeholders would go back, look into what we have available and see how we can, harness the opportunities we have as a nation. Mr. Adeshola, sir, solar adoption is on the rise across industries in Nigeria. What factors do towercos consider when switching or integrating solar energy solutions into base stations? Oh, sorry. That question was for Engineer Tunji Alabi. Mr. Shola, your question is looking at renewable energy sources in general. What major boxes must an off-grid clean energy solution, that's solar and others, check to be able to power a base station entirely off-grid reliably? Please tell us.
Thank you very much, Princess. Essentially, for telcos and MNOs, there are a number of things to consider when adopting renewable energy solutions. Top on that list, obviously, because the industry is highly regulated, is to consider the regulatory requirements that the ESCO would need to meet in order to be eligible to provide such services to telcos and MNOs. The second thing, of course, is the optimal dimension of the systems being provided. Why do I say this? I think Mr. Tunji Alabi had mentioned a key constraint for adopting solar solutions in urban areas is, of course, the space constraint. Because in most of those places, you don't have the luxury of having a lot of space to be able to provide, say, maybe up to 2 kilowatts of power or even 5 kilowatts of power, even 15 kilowatts in some cases, depending on the kind of communications solution that is being provided. You have antenna farms that in some cases require up to 150 kilowatts even. Providing a solar array, that kind of situation in urban spaces is quite a challenge and might require a lot of investment as well, even in acquiring the property to be able to do so. So the how compact and how manageable the solution is going to be very important. Also, the components being used by the ESCO is also very important. Mr. Tunji Alabi had mentioned various innovations in terms of storage solutions. You have different kinds of batteries, for example. They have different shelf life, and you want to also consider that because telecom investment requires a long time to recoup. So you also want the components to have a long lifespan so that you don't have to bear the replacement cost plus the capex cost you've already invested at the beginning. The reliability of the systems is also very critical. So you also want to know what the ESCO has done in the past and how reliable those systems have been. Because the KPIs around seller availability are very important. If there is frequent outages, it will impact revenues. When impact revenues, impact your cash flow, impact your investments as well. So, and that's another very critical thing to consider. Also, intelligent and reliable monitoring solutions is also very critical because you're able to tell how much power has been consumed. You're able to also be proactive about maintenance, and you're able to identify issues. And of course, take care of those issues. You're able to remotely monitor those systems. So you also look at remote monitoring systems that the ESCOs have when you're considering ESCOs. Another critical part of it is maintenance. Challenges we've seen a lot with, especially in off-grid locations, is the turnaround time of ESCO providers. In some cases, like Mr. Tunji had mentioned earlier, you have, even in some cases, areas that are like 10 hours away from the nearest town. And it's not even by boat. In some cases, you have to be on a bike for 2 to 3 hours to get to those locations. Wow. So you also consider, do the ESCOs have a good spread of field support engineers who are able to attend to issues between 24 to 48 hours to minimize the extent of downtime when you have issues with the power systems. Another thing you also consider is the components being used. Are they outdoor capable? Because in most cases, you don't have shelter. Even though you have cabinets, you don't necessarily have shelters that will protect those components from different varying elements, natural elements, whether it's the sun, the rain, harmattan, dust. You want to make sure those components have the capability to survive in the most extreme conditions and operating temperatures. You also consider that very, very important. Also, like I mentioned earlier, there are various irradiance levels across Nigeria. I think there are 3 or 4 zones for of irradiation in Nigeria. So you also consider in the design of the solution coming from the ESCOs, has this been taken into consideration before a design is delivered to you, and also looking at the load and of the base stations or the active devices that are going to be deployed on sites majorly. I think those are the key considerations really when you're selecting clean energy solutions for telecom operations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adeshola. So what you're telling us is for the off-grid providers, this point that you have listed, if all the providers can ensure that the systems are durable, they have a very long lifespan, right? Given that for a towerco to break even, right, the turnaround time is quite a lot. So the systems actually need to survive that turnaround time. And every other factor that you have listed here, the type of components that is being used, maintenance, which is very, very important. The systems need to be maintained to be highly efficient, and also a very good technology in the area of RMS, remote monitoring system. So if all this is being considered, right, a towerco, a base station, can actually rely on renewable energy 100% without any other source of energy. Am I correct, sir?
Yes, you're very correct. And I even forgot to mention as well safety and security. Because what you also have is, I mean, batteries obviously will attract vandals and thefts. So you want a solution, for example, that is IoT capable. So you can actually trace components or even disable them in some cases. You also want to mark them in such a way that it is very hard for you to dispose of those batteries. Because if you say it's the property of XYZ corporation or XYZ company, it's a lot harder for people to buy them, because then they know that, okay, look, this is stolen property. And in cases where you can also use IoTs to be able to monitor the movement of those batteries. So for example, if that battery is moved from a particular location, you can possibly geofence it, or basically even trace it to where exactly it has been taken. Also, that's a major consideration also.
Very true. Very correct. Yes. Energy theft is on the rise, really. Yes. I hear that people even decommission solar panels, right? So yes, security is a very, very essential.
Yes, in the design of the solution.
Thank you very much. So this next set of questions will be addressing expectations and demands from local renewable energy providers. These are the last set of questions we have. We'll start with Engineer Ayorinde. So tell us, what are the primary reasons behind low adoption of off-grid renewable energy for telecom tower operations? Hello, Engineer Ayorinde.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, sir. Did you get the question, sir?
Yes, you were talking about the low rate of adoption, right?
Correct.
All right, thank you. So when you look at the basic thing, you discover that for now, let me say cost is a basic factor. And when you go down the history lane, like the rural system, rural telephony system, is not a new thing in the telecoms industry. But when you look at the cost implication, especially in terms of the infrastructure, it's no joke.
We can hear you, sir. Go ahead.
The capex is high. I know the implication only one side. Not only that, even the power system, the renewable energy we are talking about here, which is a battery system for the rural communities, the cost is so high, especially with the unstable exchange rates we have at the moment. That's number one. Number two, when you look at even what it entails in terms of the technological know-how, though things have improved now compared to before. I could remember around the year 2012, when maybe 2010 to 2012, when Huawei first of all brought up the issue of rural telephony to MTN then, it was no joke, because you discover that due to a lot of factors, or let me say technical issues, especially on the designs and on the system, it was not really something so easy to adopt. Today, you talk of the battery and you talk of the fan may be bad, the cooling system entirely, and various systems there. And not that we were manufacturing, everything has to be imported. If you are the MNO, when you look at the turnover to get the replacement, you have to go and retrieve the faulty part from the site. Maybe you have to ship it outside for them to repair or to deploy another spare. All these cost implications actually make the MNOs to withdraw to a certain extent. So when you look at the technical know-how and the technological solutions, then it made them to actually have a kind of retreat towards adopting the renewable system. And the other thing I want to talk about is, which have been talked about, theft, the case of security. Not only stealing the batteries from sites, but how about the locals endangering even the system by tapping from the energy on site? You have done your dimensioning, you have done your calculation before deployment to site. Okay, maybe you are looking at, I need like 3 kilowatts to be deployed to this site. And this is what will sustain the whole system for good 24 hours. The locals, they wouldn't understand. To them, it's free power. And they will start tapping from it, charging their rechargeable, their touches, and the like, which eventually is exposing the system to serious issues. And as a result, there will be high expenses, OPEX, in maintaining that system on site, which the MNOs, when they look at the overall cost, it will make them not to adopt it. But I can say that due to a lot of security systems being in place now, things are gradually improving. The other thing I may need to talk about is the inadequate we localize the renewable energy solutions we want to be using or we are using.
Sorry, we lost you for a while. I don't know if you
can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I said until the MNOs, until they see the need for them to actually adopt the renewable energy system, they may be very reluctant in fully adopting it. Why? Let's assume there is a positive government policy. If you are able to contribute to reduction in emissions, if you are able to contribute to green environment by 20%, I'm talking about government policies now. Now, if that particular MNO is entitled to maybe a tax reduction of 5%, 10%, you will discover that that will motivate the MNOs to even adopt more of the renewable energy system. But in a situation whereby there is no compensation or a kind of motivation from the government side, they may see no reason to adopt it. When you look at the positive and the negatives of deploying the solutions in the rural communities. So I want to say that government motivation in terms of maybe tax rebate, in terms of maybe waivers, even the importation of the solar solutions. Since we are not manufacturing now, there can be waivers, there can be reduction in the excise duties. This will motivate the MNOs to actually adopt more of renewable energy system, especially for the rural communities. And when you look at another factor, which is the policies, like you and I know, for each government or each administrator that comes to a particular office in Nigeria, a new kind of policies come to play. And this is not helpful to the MNOs. Take for instance, if the MNO can have a kind of, let's say, 10-year long-term approach that if I continue to invest in the deployment of renewable energy in my system for the next 10 years, I have this kind of immunity to and fees, expenses. It will also ginger them to adopt more of renewable energy system. So both from the MNO side, both from the government side, and both from even all the stakeholder side, a lot has to be done so as to encourage the MNOs to adopt more of renewable energy system in the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We hear, and I'm sure that we have some policymakers on this call today, and they have heard the points that you have made in the area of low adoption, and we believe that if these areas are being addressed, we would have high adoption in the renewable energy sector, right? I would like to let our audience know that you can please drop your questions at the end of the panel discussion. We'll give room for question and answer. So on the chat box, where you have the Q&A, you can drop your questions while we continue. Then we'll take your questions at the end of the conversation. The next question goes to Mr. Adeshola. What are the gaps between TowerCo's energy demands and the available renewable energy solutions from local providers? What are the gaps?
Thank you again, Princess.
Thank you.
So in terms of gaps between what local energy, renewable energy providers and TowerCo's energy demands, primarily, first, I would say it's in terms of understanding the requirements of TowerCos and MNOs. I believe the learning curve for renewable energy companies is still a bit low, because what you find is that the offerings in a lot of cases are not fit for purpose, as in the off-the-shelf ones are not fit for purpose for telecoms deployment, because the understanding is not there. And so you have situations that you have a lot of challenge during the initial deployments when you're using an ESCO for the first time, because the understanding and the knowledge of active devices that most telecom companies use is not there, especially for local providers. The likes of Huawei and Co already have extensive experience, but local providers have a bit of a knowledge gap when it comes to designing solutions that are fit for purpose. Another thing is business model. If you look at it from a business model point of view, in the industry, there's a lot of risk sharing between TowerCos, MNOs, and energy providers. They expect energy providers to also come up with substantial investment by way of power as a service, long-term power as a service at very competitive tariffs and costs, say maybe on a quarterly, monthly, or yearly basis. The flexibility in the business models of ESCOs in Nigeria is still a bit of a challenge because the invoicing cycles and revenue cycles of telecom operators usually is between 30 to 45 days for you to be able to get your income in. And in most cases, the way ESCOs or energy providers build is totally different. So in most cases, what energy companies are providing is outright purchase of components and then saying I should, and then also entering into operation and maintenance agreements with telcos. I'm speaking primarily from the experience of hotspot networks and working with different renewable energy service providers. Also, in terms of gap, in terms of offering as well, because as you have new technologies, whether it is especially with 5G and even 4G use cases, you find that local energy service providers don't have the visibility of the solutions that would actually help power those kind of solutions. They don't have the visibility for that, and they don't have business models to support them. Because you now have edge solutions that will require specific kinds of power and types of power, wherein you need to consider space, you need to consider reliability, you need to consider monitoring, maintenance. So for now, in a lot of cases, local energy providers, renewable energy providers don't have that visibility and of those kind of solutions. And I think there needs to be greater synergy between local renewable energy service providers and telcos and MNOs to enable them deliver solutions that are really fit for purpose. Also, in terms of gap, well, there's as at now, I think we have over 40K base stations across Nigeria. And I think the regulator of the telecoms industry has set a 2030 target for all base stations to basically be hybrid, if not entirely green, because in a lot of cases it's almost impossible or not practicable to have solely off-grid solutions to power base stations because of space requirements, for example, and of course the capital expenditure involved in basically going 100% green. So there's a huge opportunity as new technologies come on board and base stations and other edge solutions put into the market. There's a huge requirement for investment in that in the sector. So there's a big gap in that area in terms of investment as well. In terms of gap again, I think because in a lot of cases, like Mr. Ayanrinde had mentioned, FX fluctuations also greatly impact energy providers. It impacts because most of the components are involved. In terms of local manufacturing of components, there's still a gap there. To be able to suit the demands of telcos, I mean, because most of those things are not produced locally, I think in a lot of cases it's more of just assembling the components here instead of, say, maybe production of PV panels. I think a couple of people do produce PV panels, but I don't know. I don't think it's quite sufficient to meet the requirements of telcos and MNOs. Then storage systems as well. I don't believe there's anywhere in Nigeria here we currently produce whether it's lithium-ion batteries or even lead-acid batteries locally. So there's a huge gap in that area in terms of being able to produce those components locally. Even remote monitoring systems as well, whether it's the software that is used whether it's the hardware that's used, most of those things are also imported as well. So
Okay.
those are where I see the gaps between telcos and renewable energy solutions that are available locally. Thank you.
Thank you for addressing those concerns. And I believe more synergy between the renewable energy providers and the towercos and MNO would also help curb this gap. You know, there needs to be more synergy between the two industries, really, because when you talk about knowledge, you know, of the system and also design, right? When there is a good synergy between both parties, right? The expectations are clear, right? In order to design a suitable solution that would serve the towercos. So yeah, knowledge is very, very essential, but synergy is extremely essential for us to address these gaps. And also local production. I believe we're making progress right now. And we what we're seeing in the industry, hopefully more progress will be made in terms of storage systems. But PV, we have started producing PVs in Nigeria. Talk about Ozano Energy, right? Who is a local manufacturer of PVs, and other renewable energy companies have started, you know, taking advantage of that local manufacturing of PV. And I believe that would also help address, you know, cost of adoption of the renewable energy. I see a bright future. I see a bright future in the space. With time, I know that the government will come through in other aspects in the area of policy, right? In the area of tax rebates and all. We are hopeful, really. So yeah, the question on this segment for Engineer Tunji, sir, how can towercos, Engineer Ayorinde, I beg your pardon, how can towercos and renewable energy providers collaborate better, right, to improve sustainability and mitigate the impact of fuel volatility? This is a bit similar to what Mr. Shola has addressed, but I want to hear from you. How do you think we can collaborate better with towercos, right, to improve sustainability and mitigate the impact of fuel volatility? Engineer Yorinde.
Okay, thank you so much. I will want to say that the first model to use, if the towercos and the renewable energy providers, if they are to collaborate better, there should be a kind of, you know, we need to look at the revenue side. And on that note, I want to talk about, rather than for the renewable providers to be waiting for the telcos to do a kind of outright purchase, you understand? Or I want to see that they can adopt a model of something like buy now, pay later, BNPL. This will further motivate the telcos to collaborate more with the renewable providers. If the synergy is there in terms of, okay, you can just do maybe 30% down payment, then after a while you can be paying based on the revenue generated on the deployment. It will motivate and it will bring more collaboration between the telco and the renewable provider. So I'm suggesting that as a very good means to intensify the collaborations. That's number one. Then number two, the renewable providers, they can see themselves as partners. How? In terms of they can come into the space with the telco to play actively in that space. How? They can synergize. Look, telco, you handle the other infrastructure, I handle the aspect of the energy system. I will deploy it, revenue from whatever we make, we are going to have a kind of synergy and contract to do revenue share model. That will also bring better collaboration, because most times what I think happens is the renewable providers, they just want to kind of sell the product, their own products, and have their money. I understand, because energy is capital intensive. That's the truth. But we are talking about how can we increase the collaboration between the telcos and the renewable providers now. So the renewable providers can go into a kind of joint partnership with the telcos so that it won't be outright purchase. They can adopt the revenue model from a sharing model formula, and that will make them to have a kind of better synergy and collaboration with the telco. The other thing I want to talk about is both the renewable providers and the telco, they need to look inwards. How? They need to come together and drive local technologies. I was just talking about the biogas being used by IT the other time. And when you look at it, because I've seen it 1-2 times, it is functioning. And we have some locations across Nigeria that look, we can use the local materials in those locations to drive our renewable. The utmost thing is we want to provide clean energy. So it's not a must. It can be in the line of solar, but we can drive clean energy. So they can collaborate better. The renewable providers can collaborate better with the telcos to invest a bit or to drive local technology in the lines of renewable energy system. And the last thing I want to mention there is both of them need to come together and engage the government further. How do I mean? If only the renewable energy providers, they keep approaching the government alone, the government may not see the need for some of their requirements. But by the time they synergize with MNOs, like MNOs, they are big, they have the voice in this country today. By the time the MNOs actually back them and drive them to the government, I think they will get better attention. How? Hello?
I'm with you, sir. Yeah, very correct.
Now, take for instance, if at the end of this webinar now, if there is a better synergy, maybe later on, that rural renewable providers, MNOs, and all the stakeholders in the telecom space come together with a communique, and it is issued to the government. And the government sees the need that, look, for anybody who is contributing to
Hello, engineer in there. We lost you. Hello, sir.
It's actually going to bring collaboration between the two parties. So, in summary, I have talked about 3 basic things now. I've talked about adopting the buy now, pay later revenue model. I've talked about the renewable providers entering more or partnering more. I know there is a kind of partnership now, but they should see it as revenue share model also. They can do that. And I've talked about intensify efforts to localize and to improve on the local renewable energy technologies. And the last thing I talked about is the aspect of government policies that both renewable providers and the telcos, they need to collaborate more and not just to be approaching government individually. It will collaborate more, and they have a joint voice that, look, telco can say, my target is maybe for the next so months, I'm looking at taking some of these sites to be 100% renewable energy, to drive on 100% energy system. And having said that, the renewable providers too, they will benefit more from that because government will issue something rather than the telcos will go to the government. Because of this, that's why I cannot do this. And the renewable providers will approach the government separately. Better and active collaboration will make them to have more results and more efficiency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, sir. Like I said earlier, I see how passionate you are, and it resonates in the voice, the way you're speaking and all of that. Really, the renewable energy sector cuts across all sectors, really. The renewable energy sector is very essential to all sectors, both the real estate sector, education, healthcare, and energy for one is very deliberate in that collaboration across board. Sometime in October, as a company, we had an event in Abuja with the real estate sector and the mini grid sector to address these challenges and how we can collaborate better, right? And from what you have said, there is need for us to replicate such with the telecom space, with the telecoms provider, the MNOs, the towercos. Really, the government needs to take us seriously. And when we have the backup from the MNOs, the MNOs have the ears of the government. The government listen to the MNOs, the towercos, because they are very, very essential to the economy, right? So when there is this synergy, collaboration, right, we would have a lot to achieve, as an industry. Thank you so much, sir, for those points you have mentioned, and they are well noted. They are well noted. Sir, Mr. Tunji Alabi, this question is for you. Can you please talk to us about the sort of renewable energy funding partnerships that serve the needs of telecom tower operations? Then after this, the last set of questions would go to all the panelists, and we just have a few minutes to end the webinar, right? Just give us a brief insights on how renewable energy funding partnership can serve the needs of telecom tower operators. Mr. Tunji Alabi. Hello, sir. Hello, Mr. Tunji.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Did you get the question, sir?
Yes, I did. I got the question.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much, Princess. I've been listening to Mr. Shoeton, an engineer, Yorinde. I've been listening to their insights into the industry. One of the things I would like to add before I answer the question is that one of the challenges we have between the telcos and the renewable energy companies is that the revenues coming out of the revenue share is very challenged because the tariff is subsidized. The tariff of 7 naira 30 kobo has been the same tariff that we've had since the naira to the dollar was 120. Now it's about 1,000 plus. We still have the same tariff. So you find out that the revenues coming out of the revenue share that the telcos do is not enough to go around. So everybody's scraping. That's had an impact on innovative solutions we can put in place and the affordability of those solutions. So I think to a very large extent, what has happened over the last few months has increased our innovation capability, but we're hoping that the government actually increases the ceiling for this tariff, because in the same way that they've subsidized the electricity sector, they've subsidized the tariff in the telecom sector, and that's why you don't see a lot of investment into the industry the way it should be. But we're hoping that over the next few months, there's been a lot of whispers in the corridors that there's going to be a 30% increase in tariff, and we're hoping that happens. So It gives us enough funds to have major investment in the industry. So in terms of the funding partnerships that exist, there are quite a number of them, and Mr. Shola has mentioned quite a number of those. The ESCOs, I know he was saying ESCOs. For those that don't know what ESCOs are, these are the energy service companies like Energy. that actually do investment they do an investment partnership with the telcos in providing the solutions, the energy solutions. There's a lot of PPP available at the moment, public-private partnerships, and these public-private partnerships actually tend to they tend to get some government subsidies from the likes of USPF, for the likes of the NCC, and that's quite common in the industry today. We have partnership with the banks and financial institutions where we take loans, especially with the Bank of Industry, that's single-digit loans. We also have quite a number of developmental banks, the Bank of Infrastructure, the Bank of the Development Bank, where you get asset-based finance. The same thing you do with the equipment manufacturers, where you get asset-based finance. The likes of Huawei and some other equipment manufacturers provide this kind of initiative in deploying these partnerships. You have a lot of companies that do CSR in terms of providing energy solutions, and I'll give you an example of what we do. In the rural communities today, we actually build what we call a digital village hub. And these digital village hubs, they house some of the initiatives that we drive, things like financial agency banking, things like telemedicine, things like solar-based cold rooms. There are some companies that provide the energy infrastructure for these digital village hubs on a CSR basis. And that seems to have worked quite well with us, where they just provide solar systems for these digital village hubs. In some cases, in the urban areas, they actually provide generators and diesel as a CSR partnership with ourselves. So there are quite a number of these partnerships, and these partnerships are crucial for addressing the financial barriers associated with adopting rural renewable energy solutions, because the cost, the initial capital required to adopt these solutions is very high. These we understand that these things benefit the environment, but also contribute to the long-term sustainability and resilience of the telecom infrastructure. There's quite a lot that these partnerships, without these partnerships, will be nowhere. So these partnerships actually drive the frontier of the adoption of rural renewable solutions, especially in the rural communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Right. The Bank of Industry, from conversations, they are very, very open to, supporting the renewable energy sector and also the African Development Bank. And I believe that more renewable energy players would key into such.
We'll tap into those opportunities.
Very correct. Very correct. And I would like to reiterate, just take us back to Engineer Yorinde's point on flexible payment plan, right? For one, for a company like us as Energy, this is part of our value proposition to our clients, right? We have provided a very flexible payment plan, right? We know that powering off-grid locations, especially when the demand is quite large, it's capital intensive, right? It might not be all that easy for the end user to adopt 100% without a flexible payment plan. So yeah, Energy has that in place. And I believe a couple of renewable energy players have also adopted flexible payment plan. So the telecom space shouldn't be scared to approach us and ask us for a payment plan, right? We would give you one, and we would look into the revenue sharing, the points about revenue sharing, which is a very key point, because when you consider the tariff, it's not funny for the MNOs and the TowerCos, right? Thank you so very much to our attendees. I believe this has been a very, very insightful discussion. For me, I have gained a lot of knowledge, right? And I believe you also have gained a lot of knowledge, right? And I believe at the end of this, we would all go back, right, to reflect on what we have heard today, right, and see how we can drive more collaboration between both sectors. This last set of questions, it's a question for all our panelists, and we'll start with engineer. Why do I keep calling you engineer? Mr. Tunji Alabi. I keep calling you. Are you an engineer, sir? We'll start with Mr. Tunji.
I'm an engineer.
Oh, beautiful. All right, sir. So, sir, tell us what valuable investment opportunity exists for agencies, right? Investors and financial institutions across the industries, energy, value chain, right? You just addressed funding partnership that is available for the renewable energy players and even the TowerCos, right? I believe we have agencies, government agencies, investors on this call, right? Financial institutions, can you speak to us? What valuable investment opportunities exist? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. There are quite a number of these. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm with you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Please, we just have
Princess, there are quite a number of these.
Few minutes for each of the questions.
Okay, let me just build them out. Yeah. Okay, so one of the investment opportunities is with smart grid technology. Yeah. That is the modernizing the current grid by providing backup solutions to the grid, so that you have because what we call our grid today is dirty grid. Is to provide smart grid technologies that allow things like advanced sensors, communication networks around the grid. There's quite an investment opportunity there to actually make sure that the grid works for us. The other kind of investment opportunities, I'll just talk about electric vehicles and the charging stations and the likes of it, because that's a new frontier. With the price of gasoline, electric vehicles is definitely what Nigeria needs. And I've seen quite a number of innovative solutions around that, where people actually just swap batteries within these vehicles. They go for about 100 kilometers, and then they swap the battery at battery points. There's quite a lot of innovation and development working in that direction. Things like hydrogen production. Hydrogen is the new clean glass. Okay. And this clean energy solutions, producing energy and the infrastructure around hydrogen, okay, as the substitutes to diesel and PMS is another investment opportunity. Things like carbon trading. Everybody's looking at carbon and carbon. People are looking at carbon capture and storage, and they're looking at carbon trading, how we can trade carbon, and that brings investment into the renewable space. So I've just mentioned four. I'll leave the opportunity for the other panelists to mention a few.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Adeshola, over to you.
Thank you again, Princess, and thank you, Mr. Tunji Alabi. So there's still opportunity, especially in the monitoring and control systems for energy solutions. There's a huge opportunity there. Because in a lot of cases, the software that is used is mostly imported. And we have a large and vibrant software tech ecosystem in Nigeria. And I think that's an area they should look into. Aside from most people try to concentrate a lot on fintech. There's a lot of software-driven solutions
Very good.
for monitoring and control systems, and even for the operations of the active devices themselves. So in our industry, especially in the low power BTS, there is the Open RAN industry, and it's software driven. So that's another opportunity for investments for potential investors. There's also cross-selling opportunities. So if you look at most of the communities where we deploy rural base stations, there's also a dearth of energy, of access to energy, which is why you heard Mr. Yorinde say, in some cases, people will go and plug their rechargeable lamps, plug their phones to the base station themselves because there's no power in the community. So there's a cross-selling opportunity for investors as well. So you provide power for the base stations as an anchor, and then you can provide power for the community for productive uses as well. There's also, of course, energy storage solutions. I mean, I think we've mentioned that as well.
Yeah.
And if you're talking generally, the Nigerian government says we require a total of $1.9 trillion to reach net zero by 2060. And that means we need to spend $10 billion every year to be able to meet the energy requirements for our energy transition plan, to be able to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. And there's also a huge opportunity for policy and regulatory support in that area. And I believe a number of the panelists have mentioned some of those policy and regulatory support opportunities for government and even non-governmental institutions as well. And I think, let me just, even energy efficient projects are also very important. Building products that are energy efficient, that use as much as possible less power to provide the same service or basically productive use as it were. So let me just stop there because I know we are short of time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Before Engineer Ayorinde address this question, to the attendees, we have a pool of questions that will pop up on your screen. Please just take a few minutes to answer the pool. I think I can see it on my screen. I believe you can also see it on your screen. At the end of the conversation, we would address just possibly one or two. Right. Engineer Ayorinde, sir, please can you address the last question on the investment opportunities?
Okay, thank you so much. You have done a good job so far, Princess. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I will just want to mention one or two investment opportunities for investors and for anyone who is actually looking in that direction. As it is now, more than 47% of Nigerian landmass is still in the rural communities. Extreme, when I mean ultra-rural. And what does that mean? It means we still have enough opportunity to make money in those communities. And how do we make money from those communities? One of it is by ensuring that there is telecoms, they are able to connect to the internet, broadband penetration. And for this to happen, that means there must be presence of coverage, network coverage. And for this to happen, it means that we are going to be in need of power system, especially renewable energy system, to drive the telecom stations. That is a great opportunity. Sincerely, Mr. Shet, Mr. Tuji would testify that investment in rural telephony space is capital intensive. That's the truth. And so for any serious investor, it's an opportunity. That's the truth. It's an opportunity. That's one. Number two, when you look at it, every 5 to 10 years, equipment, one new technology must come in. And what does that mean? Some of the equipment that have been used before, that are manufactured, they will have been at end of life. So I'm looking in the direction of recycling. What we have today is just, you see scavengers and scrap buyers, just packing some of these things and melting. What we are trying to save in terms of decarbonization and reducing emission that we are trying to save by using renewable energy, those people are still causing it again during the process of melting and during the process of just burning the equipment. So for anyone who is interested, the recycling side of telecom equipment that are at end of life is another opportunity that can be looked into. It's a big industry. That's the truth. Look at a lot of decommissioning have taken place in nearly all the MNO sites. Those equipment decommissioned, they will just take it as scraps. And some people are not looking in that direction that, look, this is a huge market for me to invest in. And the last thing I will talk about is the aspect of security and surveillance for the rural communities. See, as we are ensuring there is coverage in the rural communities, when you look at the aspect of security and surveillance, it still requires a lot of investment so that we can get to the level we want to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so very much to all our esteemed panelists. Because we are clearly behind schedule, we'll just address one question, which is for Mr. Alabi. Other questions have been addressed by our team. Right, Mr. Tunji Alabi, you have a question here for you. So the question is, for electric vehicles, I assume the batteries still have to be charged, and this is likely from fossil fuel. Please, what is the realistic possibility of using renewable?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot for the question. And I just want to echo Engineer Orinde's comments of what's a good job you've done.
Thank you so much,
the charging of batteries for electric vehicles does not necessarily have to be based on fossil fuel or using a generator or using there are quite a number of solutions that have been put in place. I don't know if anybody has heard of supercapacitor energy storage. These are supercapacitors that actually hold quite a lot of energy, and it disperses it in a manner that allows it to last much longer than both the lithium batteries and the lead acid batteries. These batteries are actually charged using solar-based charging station.
Hello, sir. Sorry, you just muted. Okay.
Yeah.
Please go ahead, sir.
These energy storage units are charged using solar-based charging stations, and the way they've done it, in what I've seen so far, is that there are quite a number of these batteries that are always on charge, and what they do is the vehicle comes in and they swap out the batteries, and they put it back on charge on the solar charging station. And what they're currently working on is the scalability of that solution. I think they have these are for tractors and keke maruas, and they have about 40 of them that use that system. They've converted the engine into an electric vehicle, and they charge them by rotation, and it's working quite well. I am sure that with further investment in that technology and in that industry, you'll get better efficiencies in both the storage and the equipment and all these. Mr. Adeshola spoke about the monitoring and control. All these keke maruas and the trotros are actually monitored in a central location. And it can tell when the batteries are draining. It sends a message to the driver to tell the driver to go back to base. And so it's quite a very sleek operation. And in speaking to the drivers, they've actually saved a significant amount of money by going off the fossil fuel, both the diesel and petrol. So this localized EV solution seems to work quite well, and I think we'll be seeing more of it as time goes on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I believe the person that asked the question has gotten a lot of insight from what you have shared. Okay. Lastly, before we call it a day, we would just like to address the poll. Right. One of the questions that was asked on the poll with the highest response is, how do you manage the challenges in 1 second. Oh, that has gone up. 1 second, please. Okay, we would pick, because of time, based on your practical experience, which of these power sources is more efficient to deploy and maintain for use in rural projects? 19 to 20%. That's 95% went for off-grid solar systems, and also 5% went to natural gas generator, right? Which is what we are discussing here today. And then the second is, which of these do you think would increase partnerships between renewable energy companies and telecom service providers in Africa? Bridging the existing knowledge gap, 40%. The highest is having a proper partnership framework, which have been addressed vigorously, if I can use that word, on the discussion today. Lastly, all of the renewable energy services you have come across in Africa, how many of them are locally driven? Mr. Adeshola addressed this intensively. Below 10%, the highest pool went to below 10%. So we have a lot of work to do locally in order to drive local production of the renewable energy component. Wow, it's been a very, very enlightening panel session today, I must confess. Thank you to all our esteemed panelists for doing justice to the discussion and addressing all the topics so passionately. We believe the outcome of this discussion today would yield more renewable energy adoption, which would in turn result to more collaboration between the industries, right? So to our audience, thank you so much. Thank you so much for staying put. Thank you for your questions. We believe that all your questions have been addressed. Thank you once again to our panelists we know how very busy you are, for taking your time out of your busy schedule to, coming on board to addressing these topics. To me and to all our panelists, we are grateful. We are looking forward to more collaboration with the telecoms providers, the MNOs, the TowerCo, and we believe that if I would say what my CEO usually says, the juice will be worth the squeeze, right? So thank you once again, and do have a lovely day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you to our audience. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Princess.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
And we have our numbers on the screen for inquiries to our audience. You can, before you opt out, you can just take a screenshot You can go on our social media handles, our LinkedIn handle, our LinkedIn page. You can see our numbers on the screen for inquiries. You can take a screenshot, reach out to us if you want to meet with any of these panelists, if you want to talk about how we can further collaborate, right? So please, these are the numbers and our website and our social media platforms. You can reach us on this. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day, people. Bye.